Jesus is called our great God and Savior. Prove me wrong. If Jesus isn't God, why does the Bible call him our great God and Savior? The Apostle Paul makes it clear in Titus 2:13, but skeptics and non-believers still deny it. Let's see if they can explain this. The city of Crete was a place of chaos. False teachers spread lies. Corruption and immorality were everywhere. Paul had left his trusted companion Titus there to restore order and build up the church. Titus was young, but Paul entrusted him with a great mission: to set things in order, appoint faithful leaders, and remind believers of the truth. So Paul wrote him a letter filled with wisdom, encouragement, and one bold declaration about Jesus Christ that no skeptic can ignore. The hope of salvation. Paul knew the struggles the early Christians faced: persecution from the Roman Empire, opposition from religious leaders, false teachings creeping into the church. But in the middle of all of this, Paul reminded Titus of the blessed hope, the return of Jesus Christ. He wrote these words: "Looking for the blessed hope and the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ." Titus 2:13, the great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Paul didn't say, our great God and also our Savior. He didn't separate the two. He made it clear, Jesus is both God and Savior. This wasn't just a title. It was a declaration of who Jesus truly is. Jesus, God and Savior in action. Throughout his ministry, Jesus didn't just claim to be the Savior, he proved it. He calmed raging storms with a word. He healed the sick with a touch. He raised the dead with a command. But his greatest act of salvation? The cross. Paul reminded Titus of this in the very next verse: "Who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from all iniquity, and purify for himself a people for his own possession, zealous for good works." Titus 2:14. Jesus gave himself to redeem us, not just as a prophet, not just as a teacher, but as the God and Savior who came to rescue his people. Who else but God can redeem the world? The Old Testament is clear: only God can save. I, even I, am the Lord, and besides me there is no Savior. Isaiah 43:11. Yet Paul says Jesus is our great God and Savior. Either Paul was wrong, or Jesus is exactly who he said he was. The challenge to skeptics. Here's the challenge. If Jesus isn't God, explain this. If salvation belongs to God alone, why does Paul call Jesus our God and Savior? If Jesus was just a man, why does the Bible give him the same title as Yahweh? Skeptics try to twist the words, but the early church knew exactly what Paul meant. Jesus is God. So I ask you, if Jesus isn't God, prove me wrong. Closing and call to action. Jesus is our great God and Savior. The question is, do you believe it? If you believe Jesus is God, type "Jesus is Lord" in the comments. If you don't, explain this passage. For more powerful Bible truths, like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Jesus is the Savior. Jesus is God. What will you do with that truth?